They told everyone I'd abandoned them. They whispered that I was unstable, broken, dangerous even. But I've kept the receipts, the kind that can burn down every lie they told. I dropped $9,200 on my parents' anniversary party. Tent, catering, flowers, the whole 9 yards. I thought I was doing something good, something thoughtful. A week later, though, I get this text from my aunt: "By the way, we're keeping the guest list tight. You're not included." At first, I stared at my phone like it had to be a mistake. Then, a few minutes later, my mom doubled down. "It's not personal." "Not personal?" "Oh, trust me, I made sure it wasn't. I canceled the tent rental, froze the catering payment, flagged the venue deposit. The florist had already ordered, so I took that loss, but at that point, I didn't care. I was done bleeding money just to be invisible at my own parents' party." The morning of the event, my phone lit up like a fire alarm. 17 missed calls. Dad, Mom, Aunt, then Dad again. Finally, on the 18th try, I answered. His voice was frantic, almost shaking. "Peter, what the hell happened?" I took a breath and said, "It's not personal." Then I hung up. And for the first time in years, it was quiet. See, this wasn't just about one party. It was about years of being treated like their emergency button. The handyman, the tech guy, the walking ATM, all wrapped into one polite son who never caused a fuss. Whenever they needed something fixed, paid for, or figured out, I was the first call. But when it came to being included, celebrated, thought of as more than a convenience? Crickets. And I let it happen. I swallowed it every time, convincing myself they didn't realize how one-sided things were. That maybe they just weren't paying attention. But this? Spending months planning and thousands of dollars on something for them only to be told I wasn't invited? That's not an oversight. That's a choice. $9,200. That's not a casual favor. That's nights spent comparing vendors, calling florists, meeting caterers. That's me remembering the little things. Like the exact tent my mom had saved on Pinterest. Like blue orchids, because Dad once said they reminded him of his grandmother. I even found a caterer willing to accommodate every picky item on Dad's diet list. Meanwhile, my siblings disappeared the second money came up. My sister hit me with, "Ugh, mortgage is tight right now." My brother gave the classic, "I'll see what I can do." Which, in family code, translates to absolutely nothing. So, like always, I stepped up. I carved time out of work, handled deposits, made it happen. And for what? A 10-word text shutting me out. Followed by my mom's dagger of a line, "It's not personal." Do you know how many times I've heard that phrase from them? When they forgot my birthday. When they invited my sister's new boyfriend to a trip but forgot me. When they only remembered I existed because the Wi-Fi was down or they couldn't figure out their taxes. So no, I didn't text back. I didn't ask questions. I just logged into my laptop and started cutting the strings. One by one. Tent? Gone. Catering? Frozen. Venue? Flagged. Florist? Whatever, they could have the orchids. By the time the party rolled around, all that was left was my dad's voice, angry and confused through the phone. What the hell happened? And me? Calm. Clear. For once, with the upper hand. It's not personal. Click. That night, I sat at home in silence. No guilt. No second guessing. Just clarity. Because this wasn't a snap decision. This was years in the making. They thought I'd always be their fixer, their wallet, their last-minute backup plan. But now? Not anymore. I didn't expect them to fall at my feet with gratitude. Honestly, I didn't even expect an apology. But deep down, I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd take a second to reflect. To realize how insane it was to cut the person footing the bill out of their own party. But no. Silence. The day after the cancelled party? Nothing. No calls, no texts. Day 2? Same story. By day 3, I finally saw something. My sister had reposted a couple of pictures, shots that looked like they came from my cousin Amanda. She's the type who treats Instagram like a personal food blog. I clicked through with this weird sense of detachment, like I was watching strangers. The backyard looked sad. No tent, of course. Just an empty space with a handful of mismatched chairs dragged out of the garage, a folding table holding some sad-looking snacks, and a cooler plopped right on the grass. Then the flowers. If you could even call them that. Cheap carnations from the grocery store down the street, shoved into a cloudy glass pitcher like someone gave up halfway through. In one photo, my dad was standing in the background, arms crossed, his face stiff and miserable. My mom was trying to smile with her sisters, but her eyes were swollen, makeup smeared just enough that it was obvious. And still, the caption beneath it read, "A beautiful celebration for two beautiful people." I couldn't decide what stung more, that it all looked so awkward and hollow, or that not a single one of them had the decency to reach out. It wasn't until day 5 that my mom finally sent me a text. Just 3 words. "Can we talk?" No explanation. No ownership. Just that. I stared at it, then set my phone down. I didn't reply. On day 6, my aunt tried her hand. And of course, she started her wall of text with, "I don't usually get involved in drama." You know how those messages go. She ended it by saying, "I hope one day you grow out of the selfish phase." Selfish. That word nearly made me laugh. I'd been covering for them for years. How many birthdays had I paid for? How many times had I stepped in with surprise gifts for my siblings when my parents were clueless about what to buy? Hell, just last fall, I shelled out $2,800 for a roof repair after my dad casually mentioned it at dinner, then stared at me in silence, waiting for me to volunteer. They'd leaned on me for so long that the idea of not having my help felt like a betrayal to them. That's the real kicker. And then my sister called. That's when I knew they were scrambling. She spoke like some PR manager doing damage control. Said things got chaotic with the planning, that maybe they could have handled it differently. But then she turned it on me. She said I'd overreacted. That I'd humiliated our parents. I let her finish, then asked her one simple question: if I hadn't frozen the money, how many people do you think would have actually thanked me at the party? She went quiet. The silence dragged on. Finally, she muttered, it was never about the money. And that's when it hit me, they'd never understand. To them, I wasn't family. I was the free labor. The bank account. The fix-it guy who didn't need recognition, because apparently, I was optional. That's when I made my choice. Quiet, but final. I was done. Done being the guy they called when the internet went out. Done crawling under the garage door when it jammed. Done writing checks that drained me while they pretended it was nothing. Next time? Let them sit on hold with Comcast. Let them Google how to reset their garage opener. Let them figure out their own chaos. Because I wasn't the handyman anymore. I wasn't the ATM. I wasn't their polite, disposable tool. And something in me knew, they were about to learn exactly what that meant. 2 weeks of silence. That had never happened before with my family. Normally, after one of our fights, or after they hit me with their classic passive-aggressive cold shoulder, I'd be the one to cave. I'd call, smooth things over without ever actually saying the word sorry, and quietly slide back into my role as their fixer. That was the rhythm. That was the script. But this time? I didn't move. I held my ground. And it didn't take long for the cracks to show. The first came from my brother. A text, casual as anything: yo, not sure if you heard, but mom's kitchen sink is acting up. Water everywhere. Like I'd just be thrilled to drive 2 hours on a Saturday and crawl under their sink with a wrench. I ignored it. The next day, my mom tried her hand. Hi Peter. The kitchen sink's leaking again. Not a big deal, but if you have a moment. I stared at her message for a long while. Then I typed 4 words: call a plumber. Good luck. She fired back instantly, almost panicked. They're charging $350 just to look at it. Can you believe that? I didn't reply. A couple of days later, my dad sent me a photo. Mold spreading beneath the sink, green, ugly, fast-moving. No words, no explanation. Just the photo, like I'd see it and instinctively jump in the car. But I didn't. Instead, I ordered takeout, put on a movie, and sketched out plans for a little bookshelf I'd been meaning to build. For the first time in years, my evening belonged to me. And then the snowball started rolling. The garage door broke. The printer refused to connect to Wi-Fi. The microwave made a strange buzzing sound. Every couple of days, another text would land: do you know how to fix this? Or, hey, do you still have that tool you used on our gutters? But never once did they say sorry. Never once did they admit they'd crossed the line. They just assumed I'd pick up where I left off. And I didn't. Not once. And here's the funny thing, my life got better. I had time again. Energy again. I started woodworking. I joined a gym. I stopped jumping every time my phone lit up, waiting for some catch-up call that was really just a request for free labor. Then, one night around 10, I got a voicemail from my mom. Her voice was that forced calm, the one she uses when she's trying to smother irritation with fake sweetness. She said, we haven't heard from you. We're worried maybe we've let this go on long enough. We miss you. It's time to move past all that drama. You know you're part of this family. I played it twice. They missed me? No, they missed what I did for them. They missed the handyman, the problem solver, the walking wallet. The son who never said no. And now? Now I was saying no with silence, with boundaries, with the kind of space they didn't know how to fill. But the real kicker came a week later. Still no reply from me. Radio silence. And just when I thought maybe, they'd finally backed off, I got the email. From my dad. Subject line: we need to talk. Now, my dad doesn't email. He barely uses his phone, except to Google things like how to tell if a potato is bad. So curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. It was short. Cold. Formal. Like he was addressing a stranger. We're in the middle of making updates to the estate planning documents and thought it would be a good idea to have a conversation beforehand. That was it. One vague sentence with the unspoken promise of inheritance dangling in the air. Like I was supposed to come crawling back because money had been tossed on the table. I didn't even think twice. I deleted it. No reply. That same night, my phone lit up with a message I never saw coming: my cousin Amanda. She wrote, hey, I've been meaning to ask something, but I wasn't sure if it was appropriate. Turns out my sister had been running her mouth. She'd been telling people that I'd flaked on the anniversary party at the last minute. That I'd been going through something and they were all worried about my mental health. And if that wasn't enough, she also claimed I never actually paid for anything. That I just pretended I was going to and then ghosted. I just sat there, staring at my screen. That was the story they were spreading about me? After everything I'd done? So for once, I didn't stay quiet. I did what I never usually do. I answered with facts. I pulled up receipts. Screenshots of invoices I'd already paid: the tent, the catering, the florist. The messages from my aunt and my mom where they flat out told me I wasn't invited. And of course, that infamous line from my mom: it's not personal. I sent it all to Amanda. Her reply came fast: what the hell? I had no idea. They made it sound like you were unstable. Unstable. That word sat in my chest like a stone. After years of fixing their problems, covering for their laziness, stepping up when no one else did, this was their narrative the second I dared to say no. Not just cutting me out of a party, but trying to erase me. To paint me as broken. That was when I stopped just reacting. I acted. I created a group chat. Added my parents, both siblings, Amanda, and one uncle who usually kept himself out of family drama. Then I sent a single message. Since there's been some confusion, I figured it was time to share the full picture. Attached were all the receipts, the screenshots, the timeline. I didn't add another word. Just hit send. Then I powered my phone off and went for a walk. 2 days later, I turned it back on, and my inbox was burning. Missed calls from dad, voicemails from mom. My sister had sent me 30 messages that swung from denial to rage to sudden guilt. Even my aunt chimed in with, was it really necessary to humiliate everyone like that? Humiliate them? Not one apology. Not 1 ounce of accountability. Just outrage that their lies had been exposed. I read through every message, took a deep breath, and then I got to work. First stop, the tax software I'd been using to file their returns for free every single year. I logged in, deleted their profiles, wiped the stored documents, and disabled autofill. Done. Next, the HVAC company. A couple of years back, I'd set up and paid for a maintenance plan after their furnace nearly died in the middle of winter. I called, canceled the plan, told them if my parents wanted coverage, they'd have to set it up themselves. Then I opened my budget planner. For years, I'd been funneling them small amounts of money without thinking about it, groceries here, a bill there, the never-ending emergencies that weren't actually emergencies. All of it on autopilot? I shut it down. Every last transfer. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even anger anymore. It was release. Freedom I hadn't realized I'd been craving. But here's the thing, deep down, I knew it wasn't over. By week 4, the silence from them didn't feel like retreat. It felt like strategy. I knew this family too well. They weren't reflecting. They were regrouping. Waiting for the dust to settle so they could come at me again, this time with a different angle. Because to them, my kindness had always been free currency, bottomless, unquestioned, automatic. And they never, ever thought the supply would run out. But it had. My dad was the first one to break. It was a Tuesday evening when my phone lit up with his name. No voicemail, just a call. 10 minutes later, a text followed. Can we meet? Just talk. No games. I didn't reply. The next day, a letter showed up at my place. A real, handwritten letter. I knew it was from him the second I saw the envelope. His all-caps handwriting slanted like he was always in a rush. Inside were 2 pages of what almost looked like an apology. He didn't admit much, of course. Said he regretted how things unfolded and wished I hadn't felt excluded. But that was it. Regret. And you have to understand, that was the most I'd ever gotten from a man who once grounded me for having a tone when I was 12. For a second, I almost gave in. I almost called. But then my buddy Drew rang me up. He used to live next door to my parents, and he told me something that stopped me cold. My dad had been out there complaining to the neighbors, spinning this story that I'd abandoned the family over a tent rental. That I was letting money change me. That letter? It wasn't regret. It was damage control. They weren't sorry, they were embarrassed. That weekend, I got an invitation to a family dinner at their house. No explanation. No acknowledgement of anything. Just a casual invite, like they could fast forward through the part where they cut me out, blamed me, and rewrote the whole story. I declined. Politely. 3 hours later, my sister called from my parents' house. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice sounded tired, rehearsed. She said, "We're ready to put everything behind us. We're willing to forgive how you handled things. Forgive me." That's when I knew they hadn't learned a damn thing. So the next morning, I called back. My dad answered. He asked if I was coming to their next family event, some cookout they were planning. Said it would mean a lot to my mom if I showed up. I told him no. He asked why. And I told him the truth, because I don't forgive you. Any of you. And I don't want to be around people who only remember I exist when they need something. The line went quiet. Just a long pause before he finally said, "So that's it?" And I said, "Yeah. At least for the near future." Then I hung up. No shouting, no drama. Just the truth. For once, they had to sit with it. I didn't slam the door, I just closed it, locked it from my side, and I had no plans to open it again anytime soon. It took a while for them to realize I wasn't bluffing. Weeks passed. Then a month. No calls, no texts. I think they thought silence would punish me, that I'd get lonely and crawl back, ready to pretend none of it ever happened. But silence didn't punish me. It freed me. I started living differently. Intentionally. I took a solo trip to Oregon, rented a cabin in the woods, hiked every morning, cooked my own meals. Some days I didn't even check my phone. For once, my life wasn't on call. I made things with my hands every week. A bookshelf. A small coffee table. A wooden stand for my record player. Piece by piece, I started to remember who I was when I wasn't carrying their weight. Then, just as the leaves started to change, my mom sent a long, carefully worded message. She said they'd been thinking a lot about how things had gone. That they realized they'd treated me unfairly. She didn't mention the party. She didn't mention the lies. Just a vague, roundabout apology with no teeth. At the end, she wrote, "We'd like to apologize. We miss you. We'd really like to reconnect." I didn't answer. 2 days later, my dad called. This time, he left a voicemail. And it was different. His tone wasn't sharp or defensive anymore. He said they wanted to make things right. That they should have handled things better. And I could hear it, the weariness in his voice. The part of him that had always been used to winning, to being right, was tired. Because this time, the silence wasn't mine to break. It was theirs. I finally agreed to meet. We chose a quiet diner halfway between our towns, neutral ground. My dad opened with small talk, asking about work, cracking a flimsy joke about the weather. My mom looked worn down, but there was a spark of hope in her eyes. And then she said it. "We're really sorry, Peter. For everything. We know we messed up." I didn't rush to fill the silence. I let it hang there like heavy smoke. Finally, I said, "Thank you." Then I followed with the truth. I needed to hear that. But I'm not ready to come back. And honestly, I don't know when I will be. My mom blinked, as if she hadn't heard me right. My dad leaned back, his face more serious than I'd seen in years. For the first time, it felt like they were actually listening instead of waiting for me to fold. I told them I didn't carry hate, but I also didn't forget. I said, "People who love you don't cut you out and then ask for your money. I spent too long believing your love was conditional. Now, I'm making sure mine won't be taken for granted." When the check came, I paid for my coffee, stood up, and left them with one final line: "This isn't goodbye, but it's not a return either." And that's where it stayed. No dramatic blowout, no tearful movie-ending hug. Just a clean, cold line between the past and whatever future might come, if it came at all. Months passed. Strangely, I found peace in the distance. Not perfect peace, not total, but a steady kind of quiet. I worked. Built furniture with my own hands. Took road trips alone. Let the silence stay, and for once, it didn't feel like punishment. It felt like freedom. Then something I never expected showed up in my mailbox. Not an email. Not a voicemail. A real letter. The handwriting wasn't familiar. Inside was a small card from Amanda, my cousin, the only one who'd ever reached out without some angle. She wrote that she wanted to tell me something in person, over coffee. She promised it wasn't family drama, her words, and said she'd understand if I wasn't interested. I agreed, mostly out of curiosity. We met at a small coffee shop in town. Amanda looked nervous, which was unusual for her. She didn't waste time. "Your mom's been going to therapy. For real." I didn't respond. I just waited. She explained, after I walked away, things unraveled more than I realized. My sister stopped coming around. My dad grew quieter. Some extended family, quietly, without spectacle, called them out after seeing the receipts I'd shared. It wasn't drama. It was distance. But the real crack came when my mom tried to plan Thanksgiving and no one volunteered. My dad told her, flat out, "We're not doing that again." That's when, according to Amanda, my mom broke down. She admitted what she'd done, not just with me, but for years. And her therapist encouraged her to write a real apology. But she hadn't sent it. She was terrified I wouldn't care, or worse, that I'd ignore it. I told Amanda I didn't need an apology written on paper. I needed proof the cycle was actually broken. That's when Amanda handed me something else. A folded sheet of paper. "From your dad," she said. I opened it. One line. "I'm trying to learn how to be a dad." No signature. No explanation. Just that. And somehow, that hit harder than every excuse, every half apology, every deflection they'd thrown at me for years. I didn't make a decision right away. I went home, set that note on my desk, and just sat with it. Some nights I'd pick it up, read those 7 words again: "I'm trying to learn how to be a dad." And just stare. 2 weeks passed like that. One evening, I found myself driving past my parents' house. I didn't pull in. I didn't knock on the door. I just parked down the street and watched. The lights were on. The TV flickered through the living room window. Life looked normal. But to me, it felt different. Not better. Not worse. Just quieter. That night, I finally put pen to paper. Not a reply. Not an answer. Just a letter. "You don't need to apologize again. What you do from here matters more. I'm not ready to come back. But I'm open to something new. Something slower. Something real. If that's what you want too, then we'll see." I didn't sign it with love. Just with my name. Peter. Then I dropped it in the mailbox the next morning. Conclusion. I don't know if stories like this ever get perfect endings. Families don't tie up neatly like TV shows, with hugs and music swelling and everyone around a dinner table. Real life's messier. Sometimes people change. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes, if you're lucky, they just get quiet enough to start listening. But here's what I do know: I stopped begging for the bare minimum. I stopped trading pieces of myself for crumbs of connection. I stopped showing up just to be erased. And for once, my family had to meet me where I was, not drag me back to where they were comfortable. So maybe this is the beginning of something different. Or maybe it's just closure. Either way, I'm good.